I'll again steep here with a few words on the much perpetrated concept of the religion of peace. It's been put forward by certain political classes for reasons, I would guess, to gain votes, to get more sympathy, I guess, left-leaning sympathy from newcomers who are what most people call Muslims. Now, it's not for me to say that other religions are peaceful. I think all religions, by their very nature, are violent because they propose to know what can't be known and then impose it on gullible children and so on. And some just take it to a greater extreme. But first of all, to set a few things straight, I hope, if I understand this correctly, what we're told in the media, which incidentally, from what I can see, there's an absolute frenzy here in the so-called Canada to propagandize people for a massive wave of new Muslim immigrants, migrants, or whatever you want to call them. And I don't fault them, right? I mean, if I was in Muslim garb and been indoctrinated into Islam and was in a war zone, sure as hell I'd want to get on the next plane too. So I can't fault them for a minute. I'm talking about the powers that be that want to propagandize the masses here into how peaceful the nature of this culture is and to assimilate it as though it is equally as benevolent as anybody else's. Now, first of all, Islam does not mean peace. That's what we've been told many times, right? That Islam means peace or something like that. And incidentally, Muslim and Islam are synonymous. It's just a conjugation difference or something like that. I looked it up once recently. But Islam or Muslim basically means submission. And my understanding is submission to a tyrannical God called Allah. And why would I say that this God is tyrannical? Well, any God is tyrannical. As I can see it, any concept of God is tyrannical. Because men and women, man as the general sense, creates gods in his image, in his evil image, in his image to control others. Because otherwise you wouldn't need to create a God and impose that God upon everybody else. God is a concept that man comes up with to give himself authority to govern over others. That's all God is. And as I see it anyways. Now, the Quran, which is supposed to be the undefilable word of God, my understanding is, unalterable, unchangeable, is a book of hate towards unbelievers, to some extent anyway. I don't know to how much extent, but a fairly large extent. And for example, this is according to the website Free Thought Nation. I mean, it could use verification for sure. But here's one, the Quran 2:1/2:6 and 2.10. Okay, this book is not to be doubted. Well, of course it's not to be doubted. It's supposed to be the Word of God. So if something's the Word of God, how could it be doubted, right? As for the unbeliever, it is the same whether or not you forewarn them. They will not have faith. God has set a seal upon their hearts and ears. Their sight is dimmed, and grievous punishment awaits them. So God obviously created these unbelievers, but he created them in such a way that that their ears are sealed and their ears and their hearts. God has put a seal upon their heart and ears. Their sight is dimmed, and grievous punishment awaits them. So God created these unbelievers with the intention of punishing them. If that's not one sadistic motherfucker, I don't know what is. So be damned with Allah and any other god that creates people to be punished. And yeah, I have no time for this. I mean, I can't believe that this stuff is just readily available. You can look it up on the internet anywhere. And yet, the political marching classes are just foaming at the mouth with joy to somehow claim that this is an equivalent philosophy for life as any other. To me, it's just complete nonsense. And of course, not all people who call themselves Muslims are, going to condemn all non-believers to whatever. Of course, that's true. But what they are is they're the apostates. I mean, they call themselves Muslims, but they're not real Muslims, right? Because a real Muslim would abide by the word of God, right? If they say the book of the Quran is the word of God, and it is true, and it is perpetually true. What does it say there again? This book is not to be doubted. So all the verses upon God's curse beyond the infidels. Evil is that of which they have bartered away their souls to deny God's own revelation, judging that he should reveal his bounty to whom he chooses from among his servants. So he's only going to choose certain ones, and he's going to give his bounty to them. They have incurred God's most inexorable wrath, and ignominious, not the greatest reader. Anyway, punishment awaits them, the unbelievers. So, give us victory over the unbelievers. I mean, there's a lot of, the unbeliever is this very unholy creation of God. So God can't be that holy then, in other words, right? Because God created this unbelieving class, which is the majority of the world, is classified as the unbeliever, including most Muslims, because most Muslims don't subscribe to this, most people who call themselves Muslims. And therefore they are apostates. So the holy warriors, the ones who are turning their wrath on the unbelievers, they are the holy ones. They are following the word of God. And if they're deluded enough, I guess you can't really fault them, but damn, it's pretty dangerous. I don't know. What's this got to do with the quality of our lives? Improving the quality of our life experience? Well, I think any time we expose ourselves or allow ourselves to be truthful, it's not to hate on anybody. I mean, shit, most of us would be in the same league, and some of us would, go into holy jihad and so on if we had been raised that way. Statistically, I mean, because these people were kids in this sort of a culture, and, end up believing this stuff, or believing enough of it to be a stealthy agnostic, say you believe it anyway. So you can't really fault them for that, because we'd all be the same in the same circumstances. But, and it's not even really to do anything about this. I think the best thing we can do for anybody is to try to befriend them, show not so much respect, but compassion, goodwill is another good one. But just be aware of the propaganda that's being spun. And it's not being spun for our good. It's not being spun for their good either. I mean, to tell people lies constantly about themselves and to say, we respect your culture, a culture that cuts a good chunk of the penis off a boy as soon as he's born, and that's supposed to be respected, and that puts women in a bag, and teaches everybody to hate the infidels and the unbelievers. and that God has actually, I mean, this is child abuse. I mean, serious child abuse. To tell a child that that kid over there has been made by God, and he's going to live out his life, and he's going to be seriously punished when he dies, having none, and he can't do anything about it. His heart is sealed and his eyes are sealed. His ears are sealed. He can't do anything about it. And you can kill him if you want, and you'll actually gain that. That is a virtuous thing to do. I don't know, to use a mass media that's been used today to tell people that this is a peaceful way to live is complete baloney. It's nonsense. It's horseshit. And even, I get it. I think I get it anyways. The holy wars that are going on and the terrorism and so on that's going on is not the complete fault of these people either. It to a certain extent, because they've been provoked, right? I mean, there's two sides to it. There is, when you have a religious indoctrination like this, you have a bunch of mad hornets. Not all of them, but enough of them, right? And then when you have organizations, criminal organizations, as I would call them, such as the Canadian military, the US military, dropping bombs, and it's like poking that hornet's nest constantly, right? Dropping bombs and fucking around in their communities and neighborhoods and bombing their wedding parties and stuff like that. It's no wonder that to them, this is just God's message that these infidels are in fact evil, and that we have to become holy warriors again. We've been in sin all this time, not actually continuing to fight them by being at peace with them. We got to take the battle back and just kill as many of those motherfuckers as we can, right? That's probably how these bombers and shooters and so on and suicide bombers are thinking. Maybe. I don't know. But word of the wise, perhaps, don't believe a damn thing the media is telling you about Muslims. It does not mean peace. It means submission to God. And if you look at what this God concept is, this God that created the unbelievers, who, with a sealed heart and sealed eyes and so on, they can't be changed. They're completely write-offs. And in spite of all that, they're still going to be seriously punished and tortured at the end times. That is a psychopath, a mean son of a bitch of a God, and that's who they are to submit to. That's what Islam means. It means to submit to a psychopathic, cruel, wretched, evil God. So, something to think about. Steve here again, great chatting. Talk again soon. Bye.